All right, hi folks. I'm going to be attempting to see how this goes for at least trying to keep us on track somewhat as far as World War One is concerned. First of all, I hope you're doing all right. Seriously, if you're having any problems, accessing things, just in general, you're kind of at wit's end, staying at home and everything else, and you want to let somebody know privately, let me know, and I'll try and connect you with somebody who's good at that sort of thing. In the meantime, as we try to get back into things, just understand my expectation is going to be that what we're going to do is I'm going to be uploading things during the week that I need you to basically look at. So for instance, you can read through the presentation that I'm going to go through and that sort of thing. There may be a couple of videos associated with it that I'm looking for you to do, and then there's sort of like an assignment that I want you to do as well, and we'll do that as long as we are out. And then there's going to be a live session, and I'll schedule a live session at something that's convenient for everybody for the most part. Obviously, with 19 of you and one of me, that's 20 different possibilities as far as our time demands are concerned. So just bear in mind that I'm going to do my best to make sure you understand the material, given that you still have a test next year on this, and that you feel as engaged as possible. So, like this video that I'm looking at right now is something you may already have some notes on, and that's fine. The point is to have me explain it in case something is not clear, maybe offer some suggestions on ways that it can be more helpful or effective for you in the long run. So you're not worried. I do have, my liquid courage there for Mountain Dew. I have a stopwatch going because I don't really want to go more than 30 minutes as far as the video is concerned. I'm concerned that people will, lose focus and need to just get off as much as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and start with this. And let me make a reminder that something I've told you before is that in the case of World War One, the impacts on women and or civilians are always really important to know. I be frequently asked questions about those two things. And if you want to organize it easily or simply, one of the things you may want to do is put together a list of, let's say, by country, and say, this is how the people of Germany were impacted, or these people in Britain were impacted in this fashion. If you want to do like a study guide kind of thing that says, this is how women were impacted, it's important to just have those as a reference, throughout the remainder of this year and then, of course, next year. So one of the bigger things that's going on is that Britain, for example, does something that would have never been done before. And it's important to keep in mind that, again, in the past, military fought military and civilians were kind of exempt. Now, World War One, that begins to go away. Remember the bombings, like the Zeppelins that were flying over London and dropping bombs down, or attempting to go to Liverpool and dropping their bombs down. So people began getting caught in that, and people began being part of the targets. So that being said, when Britain puts the blockade around Germany so that nothing goes in, nothing goes out, no food, no medicine, no other things, that's going to impact the people. In response to the blockade of Germany, of course, Germany is going to say the waters around Britain are a war zone. Anything going in there can potentially be sunk. Example, the Lusitania. So being able to offer some specific examples like the Lusitania, being a representation of the war zone is helpful. But similarly, what did the people of Germany go through? And that's more important because it leads to what you're going to study next year with Hitler. In Hitler's case, he's going to see the German people, very, very successful people. I mean, sorry to make a reference to right now, but, so here we are in the United States. We have a gazillion, tons of food produced a year. And right now, if you go to Publix, you're going to be hard pressed to find boneless, skinless chicken. We have, incredible industries, but yet you can't find toilet paper right now. That's kind of what Germany goes through, and, they went from being very prosperous and very successful to all of a sudden not having that amount of food coming in. They lost 55%, they lost 45% of all their food due to the blockade. And that's not just going to be for, let's say, 2 weeks or a month and, that sort of thing. It's going to last for 4 years. And hopefully in our case, that doesn't. But the thing to keep in mind is the cumulative effect on that, of course, is, it's going to make sure there's nobody fat in Germany, but it's also going to contribute to a reduction in health. And that's going to be something, you don't get the nutrients, the vitamins, and things like that. Coal is getting cut off. There goes your source of electrical, power. Or heating your homes was done by coal. My dad had that when he was little. Fertilizer for crops used to come in. Well, now your crop yield is going to be down. You're already getting less coming in from imports, but now you're not going to have as much coming in for, what you needed to grow your own crops locally. So they start looking for alternatives, and the alternatives are going to be pretty bad. Sorry, I'm looking at messages coming in from people I work with, and I'm going to mute that right now. But people are going to start having some issues. They're going to start making some alternatives. So when you see powdered milk, okay, it doesn't sound so bad, but Kriegsbrot, war bread, is literally bread that's made with sawdust. They're going to use it as wheat combined with a little bit of wheat and try and bake it. And it's going to be awful. It's going to probably rough on your intestines and everything else. But they need food. Otherwise, they're going to have their stomachs growling, and it's going to be really, really awful during that time. Also, what do you feed your animals? Well, if you feed the pigs your leftovers, you don't have any leftovers when everything's being rationed. So that's a problem. So if you start killing off your pigs, well, that means there's less food available. So it gets worse and worse and worse. And in Germany and in Vienna, there are food riots that are going to happen, simply because people don't have enough food. And again, I don't think it's going to happen now, but, we have a scenario today where, about a week from now, there's a whole lot of people are going to be going, hey, I haven't gotten toilet paper for 2 weeks. I'm out. I need to go get some. Hey, I can't find food. I can't find medicine to take care of grandma. And that could force some people into some drastic action. Again, I'm not suggesting a riot. Let's not do that. As you know, I think we went over this before. You had in Germany, the ration for food is about 1,000 calories a day. And the calories per person, that you're supposed to get as an adult male, 2,500, as an adult female, 2,000. Well, that's half or less than half. So you start seeing different diseases that are going to come out. Scurvy, that's a lack of vitamin C. Tuberculosis, sort of like, a very, very deep infection inside your lungs. Dysentery, that lovely, let's have all the diarrhea we can have kind of thing. That leaches your body of salts. And that's going to, be difficult to replace when you don't have enough, incoming. And again, there's that graphic of the milkshake and the ketchup packets, but that's 1,000 calories in one day. So by 1918, this really prosperous country, had 300,000 people die of malnutrition, and 300,000 people dying in a modern country, dying in a country that's intellectual, dying in a country that had all the colleges they needed and public transportation and a solid distribution network. 300,000 civilians died just because of the blockade. So by the time that you get to 1919, now wait a minute, by the end of the fighting, yeah. So another 463,000 people are going to die simply by the time that the Treaty of Versailles is finally signed. Because until Germany signs on the Treaty of Versailles, the war is technically not over. And until, the Germans sign, that blockade continues. The idea being that this is still a condition of war. And it's kind of like the gun to the head of the Germans saying, if you don't sign, well, the blockade continues and now we invade your country and all the fighting is going to take place in your cities and we're going to destroy things. So it further guarantees that Germany is going to sign up on that Treaty of Versailles, even though they can't stand it. How desperate are people? They're so desperate that this horse was walking down the street and they literally dragged it down and tore it apart and started, taking it apart for food. That's pretty desperate. So another thing to keep in mind is that, there were examples of, sorry, my kids are making noise right now and I don't need that in the background. The people were impacted by different cities being impacted. Like I told you, the Zeppelins were out there attacking London, sort of intending Liverpool as well. 2,000 deaths is not as bad as, what happened with the blockade, obviously. But, again, if you want propaganda purposes, you have civilians being killed, including children. You see the poster over here on the right hand side or left hand side. Men of Britain, will you stand this? It's trying to encourage them to go volunteer for the war and let them know that this is something that they're supposed to avenge somehow. So there's an example of artwork showing people sheltering in the underground, so a scene that you'd see again in World War II. Other civilians were impacted in other places. Belgium, for example, was occupied throughout the war. And some people in the Belgian army put on civilian clothing and went out and tried to pretend like they were regular Belgians. And at times they tried to stop the Germans somehow. Well, if they killed a German, the German government, the German military passed a rule that said every time one German soldier got killed in Belgium, they're just going to go grab 10 Belgians and put them against a wall. And they're going to shoot them. And, it could be a woman, it could be a child, it could be a professor, it could be a reverend. It doesn't matter. They're going to grab 10 people and just shoot them. And if you took out 5 guys, there's 50 Belgians that are going to be killed. That might make you mad. Individually, you might be like, man, that's my dad, and you want to go and avenge your father's death. But if you do so, that could result in the deaths of your best friend, and it's just something to keep in mind. It was a pretty heavy toll to take. So civilians are being killed in a lot of different ways, and then you get these numbers here, what's called the Rape of Belgium, where different people were killed in a lot of different places. You see some significant numbers to not 665 people overall. You see some numbers here, and you might notice right above, if you can see where the cursor is there on the right side, Cavell E. That sounds like a familiar name. It's because it's Edith Cavell, the British nurse / nun who was helping different people medically, and including Germans and British guys, and helping them escape. So she's one of those who gets shot and killed in that particular city. Now, because of all this, there was some propaganda that was put together by especially the British that ended up not being valid. So, fake news of that era. The example on the left, it's really hard to read down here, so I'll just tell you what's going on. A Boy Scout in Belgium was supposedly aware, having just come down a hill, where there were some Belgian resistance members shooting at the Germans. And the Germans captured the kid, and they said, tell us where they are. And he said, I'm not going to tell you. I'm a proud Belgian. So they shot him. It's an example of a patriotic young man who sacrifices his life, to help his people get away. And that's going to be sensationalized all over the English-speaking world, saying, look how bad these guys are. Another example on the right side. This kid hears some commotion at his farm next door. He goes across to see his neighbor. His neighbor's about to be killed by a German patrol for some reason. And they say, well, you caught us in the act, so tell you what, we'll let you go if you shoot him. Otherwise, he would have been a witness and would have told everybody what was going on. And, he didn't want to do that. So they said, here's the gun, shoot your neighbor. And he goes, okay. And he actually shot the officer in charge. Now, I know we're all sitting there going, oh, man, it's a great idea. He just shot the officer in charge. Well, then they shot him too. But these brave examples, were used by the British, and maybe they happened, maybe they didn't happen. Part of it was to put pressure on the American people itself to go, oh my goodness, this is so awful. We should intervene. Germany is bad. We should, take part in the war on the part of Britain, which is what they were really going for. Again, here's some other examples that are specifically proven to be false that got published in the newspapers that, British newspapers in particular were printing these things up. In fact, there was a secret government commission to kind of make this kind of stuff up. So, if you read these examples, and it sounds horrible, each one of them, each one worse than the last, it's putting pressure on the U.S. to join the war. And ultimately, yes, we do, but it doesn't come until much, much later. Other people being victimized by the war. Of course, people like the Lusitania, and it's 1,000 people plus who died. The Sussex, the Arabic, the passenger ships that get sunk. Again, doesn't say much on this propaganda poster. It just simply says enlist, a mother cradling a baby as they sink down to oblivion, to avenge their loss again. So in other ways that people were going to be involved in World War I, this is an important concept called total war. Total war is the involvement of everybody in a society in the war effort. And we see it in World War I, we see it in World War II. There's not a lot that I'm going to show you for this because, frankly, the evidence is hard to find. But scrap drive wise, they did different things to encourage recycling in particular. In World War II, is going to be the best recycling we've ever done in our country. But long story short, they tried this in World War One. This is a German poster. You can see specifically they're looking for aluminum. Anything that's metal, they can melt down, whether it can be used for battleships or bullets or other things. They're going to go look for it. Another German example, so here they are, and everybody's got like these pots and pans they weren't using. We have some that have lost their nonstick coating, yet we still keep them. If we were really desperate as a country, we would turn those in. I'd have a little more room in my kitchen. It'd be great. But this was done in all the warring powers, and ultimately it would be done in the United States as well once we finally get involved in the war. So as far as civilians are concerned, unfortunately, Germany doesn't realize until a little bit late needs a lot more people in its workforce. And in December 1916, the war's been going on for 2 years, and they say now everybody from 17 to 60 is going to be, forced to go to work. 60. Now, in our day, 60 is not super, super old, but back then it was. And because it was, the idea of having somebody that old going to work in a factory was kind of like really just like, wow, how desperate are you? They knew they were going to have this big offensive coming up in May 1970. Once the spring rolled around and, they were going to sort of resume full on fighting after they take sort of a break in the winter. The plan was to have lots of weapons available so they could go out and attack. And so they needed the weapons before they could do the offensive. So this is like being done much earlier to make sure they had all the supplies that are necessary. So look at this picture for just a moment. And I wish that I knew how to zoom in a little better, but unfortunately I don't, given with what I'm working with. There's a full-size adult. There's a kid over there. And he's not like there after work, after school, coming in and, spending a couple hours at dad's shop or something. They're actually not going to school. They're actually being pressed into service because they are just that desperate. So you have women taking their parts or taking part in the manufacturing munitions. You have kids who are taking part. And realistically speaking, it's a society where everybody's involved. Once again, is an example of that term I told you where everybody's involved, called what kind of war? Total war, right. I can't show you this, I don't think. Nope, it's not letting me do that. Once the war comes to a halt, though, of course, all the soldiers want to come home. And there's not enough ships to bring everybody home at once. It took literally months, if not years, to get everybody over to France, which, imagine the case of the Canadians. They're there from 1914 to 1918, the war halts. They want to go home. They want to resume their lives. People from Australia are on the Western Front. They've been building for years. Now they have to turn around and go home. They're like, dude, the war's over. Let me go home. You can see the numbers there. In 1919, the foreign soldiers, this is the Australians, the New Zealanders, and so forth, actually do riot because they've been stuck there for so long. And there are still 230,000 soldiers still in the area in 1922. And that's going to cause a problem. Again, if you're a soldier and you want to resume your life, maybe you were supposed to go to college and you didn't get that chance. You're all set to marry the girl of your dreams and, start your family, start your life. You can't do that. Go get your own farm. Can't do that yet. And you just want to get on. You've done your part. Now it's time to move forward. How's France impacted? Well, this was a church. And again, this is actually a cleaned up version. And the reason we know it's a cleaned up version is simply because look how clear it is down here in this, what we would recall as a roadway. Down here on the bottom, there's nothing that's like sort of come down from that slope that would have. And wait, I can actually, I can try this. Ooh, nope, that's not working. Okay. See, look at that. So here's the roadway that's all cleared up. But see, here's this, sort of a slope. Stuff would come down here and be down in the road, and that's not the case. But they're doing that now. Okay. Let's turn this off because I'm still experimenting with learning how to do things. As far as African Americans are concerned in World War One, they are given an opportunity to fight. They fought in every war America's ever fought in. Unfortunately, because of the times that we're talking about, Jim Crow is still something going on in the American South. Blacks and whites are not seen as equal by any stretch of the imagination whatsoever. So they're not really put in frontline units. They're not going to go fight a lot. There is one unit that will ultimately get that opportunity. If memory serves, it's the 69th Infantry Division based out of Harlem. They're known as the Harlem Hellfighters. But in particular, they want to do their part. They're Americans, and they're willing to do their part for a country that discriminates against them, which is amazing. So 400,000 will serve, and they're going to try and go to the places where the jobs are. Up until this point, most Black Americans, of course, were down in the South post-Civil War. Difficult to move, expensive to move. And they are going to move to where the jobs are as a better economic opportunity. Out of the 400,000 who serve in uniform, much like women were freeing a man to fight, in some cases, you could get a Black soldier who would basically maybe be like a typist or a clerk or somebody who stocks shelves or something within the military. And that would free up the white soldier to go over and fight, in France. And maybe, that's a better thing, if you don't want to get shot at. But it's not giving you an opportunity to show your bravery, your patriotism. Yes, you're a part of the war effort, but you're not being given the same opportunity to serve, achieve glory, and become, famous, I guess. So I'm going to see if I can upload this video in particular to what's online so you can see it. There is initially some resistance on the part of some Black Americans taking part in the war because, again, they're not treated equally. But ultimately, it's one of those things they say, if we want to be treated equally, we need to share the burdens equally. And that's going to be important. Post-war Britain, this is an advertisement that would have been seen. So here are things that this German guy had been doing, during the war years, and again, burning cities and killing babies and, ravaging women and whatnot. But here's this guy now showing up again. For every German who's employed, it means a British worker who's idle. Every German article sold means a British article unsold. The idea being, we just shouldn't forgive them for what they did. Just because the war is over, these are the same people who did these awful things. In Belgium, people were kicked out of their homes and forced to live in different fashions. I mean, again, I can't imagine my wife and I sharing that kind of a space with 3 of our kids. Straws are maybe sticks. I don't know. Uncomfortable looking. And yet there they are having to do that because their home is either occupied or destroyed. Women, of course, did get the right to vote as a result of World War I. Canadian women were the very first to get the right to vote. So there's a trivia question waiting to happen. Basically was because if you were a relative of a soldier, a wife, a mother, a sister, or something like that, you got the right to vote. And then it just really got expanded quickly to any Canadian women. American women, of course, it took the 19th Amendment. The 19th Amendment comes out and officially is ratified. Women get to vote in all national elections in 1920. British women waited a little bit longer. They had actually been the pioneers in voting rights and such. But, it took them a lot longer to get full voting opportunities for women. But these 3 countries can be used as examples of a positive benefit of the war in that because women showed their ability to take part, it showed their ability to be supportive and shoulder burdens that previously were thought, man's work. They got the right to vote. And, that went a long way towards beginning the equality movement that we would see in the 1900s. So Canada first, America second, British the third. Getting close to the end here. That one, again, I'll try and look at online as well. And just to put it out there, this is the last one. How did it impact people? World War I. Well, this is J.R.R. Tolkien over here. You may be familiar with him. He did the whole Hobbit series and the Lord of the Rings and everything else. Graduate of Exeter College at Oxford, where Mr. Silo and I spent some time. But his battle scenes in particular, from Mordor and everything else that was going on, he kind of changed, the Germans and the British into, the good guys and the orcs who were fighting and the light versus the dark. And, he was definitely impacted by serving as an officer in World War I. C.S. Lewis, he would write the Narnia series, The Language and the Wardrobe. He also was a World War I veteran. Ernest Hemingway over on the right was a volunteer. He worked for the Red Cross. He was an ambulance driver. And he wrote about that period, and it definitely influenced his life He was always an adventure seeker, but some of the things that he saw and some of the things that he witnessed definitely impacted him psychologically and may have changed him in some ways. So this is the first one. It's all about how individuals in different places were impacted. There's a second one of these I'll be going through coming up soon. And the idea is to give you an idea of how people, how women were impacted. And, you know, if you need to slow things down on this or watch it again, obviously, every one of the slides you just saw is online so that you can refer to that. There's going to be a Google form I want you to fill out having seen this so that I can give you credit for a weekly assignment kind of thing. I'll have that up really, really soon as well. So just take a look at this, and thanks for watching. If you need some help with something, let me know, and I'll let you know when the live session is going to be.